Good evening. You're watching Just the News. I'm Amita Balachandra. We start off today's bulletin with updates on Sri Lanka. Now, Sri Lankan Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa has now resigned from the post amid severe economic crisis in the country. Now, in a letter as reported by AFP, Mr. Rajapaksa said, and I quote, "I'm resigning with immediate effect so that you will be able to appoint an all-party government to guide the country out of the current economic crisis." End quote. Now, this comes after the Sri Lankan police imposed a nationwide curfew after clashes broke out between two political rival camps. Over 78 people were injured in the clashes. Now, according to NDTV, MP Amarakirti Atukorala opened fire and critically wounded two people, blocking his car, and he was then later found dead after trying to take refuge in a nearby building. Now, this is what's going to happen. The cabinet now stands dissolved. The largest opposition party, in the meantime, has refused to join any government headed by a member of the Rajapaksa clan. The president had earlier agreed to replace his older brother as the prime minister and maintained that a national council would be appointed to name a new prime minister and cabinet comprising all parties in the parliament. Now, Sri Lanka, if you remember, has suffered months of blackouts and there's shortage of food, fuel. People have taken to the streets asking for both the president and the prime minister to resign. And there's weeks of extremely uncertain times in Sri Lanka as it faces its worst ever economic crisis. Meanwhile, in other news, the Supreme Court today refused to entertain the plea filed by CPIM against the anti-encroachment drive in Delhi's Shaheen Bagh area. Now, the Supreme Court further asked the petitioner to approach the Delhi High Court on the matter and strongly objected to a political party approaching the court. Now, the court said, and I quote, "You do not even go to the High Court, you come straight to the Supreme Court. What is this? A political party coming here and telling us what to do." End quote. Now, the anti-encroachment drive at Shaheen Bagh was immediately halted hours after the civic body arrived at the spot along with the Delhi police. Now, local residents of Shaheen Bagh gathered in front of the bulldozers and protested as well. Now, this comes in the backdrop of a similar exercise in North Delhi's Jahangirpuri, days after a communal clash broke out in the area during a Hanuman Jayanti procession. Also in the news, the centre today has told the Supreme Court that it has decided to re-examine and reconsider the provisions of the sedition law and urged it to defer hearing on petitions challenging the constitutional validity of the law until such exercise is carried out before an appropriate forum. Now, in an affidavit today, the centre has said, and I quote, "The Government of India, being fully cognizant of various views being expressed on the subject of sedition and also having considered the concerns of civil liberties and human rights, while committed to maintain and protect the sovereignty and integrity of this great nation, has decided to re-examine and reconsider the provisions of Section 124A of the Indian Penal Code, which can only be done before the competent forum." End quote. Now, earlier, the centre had defended the sedition law, saying that it is a valid law and there are enough safeguards already in place to balance the constitutional rights of citizens and the needs of the state as well. The centre, however, has not specified today any time frame for this re-examination. An update on the IndiGo story now. After IndiGo allegedly denied boarding to a specially abled child on a Hyderabad-bound flight at Ranchi Airport on Saturday, the CEO has now said that the airlines took the best decision under difficult circumstances. Now, this is what the statement says, and I quote, "All of us at IndiGo are truly distressed by this particular incident. We offer our sincere regrets to the affected family for the unfortunate experience, and as a small token of our appreciation of their lifelong dedication, would like to offer to purchase an electric wheelchair for their son." End quote. Now, the incident was brought to light on Facebook by a passenger at the airport who was waiting to board another flight. Now, IndiGo, in a statement earlier, had said that the child posed a threat to other passengers' safety. It also further stressed that it takes pride in being inclusive playing down suggestions of discriminatory behavior. Now, there's also a comment that's come in from Aviation Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia, who took to Twitter to say, and I quote, "There is zero tolerance towards such behavior. No human being should have to go through this. Investigating the matter by myself, post which appropriate action will be taken," end quote. Now, the aviation regulator has also asked IndiGo for a report. Meanwhile, some tragic news coming in from Telangana. At least 9 people were killed and 17 others injured after a minivan collided with a truck in Telangana's Kamaradi district on Sunday evening. Now, the police have said that the case of causing death by negligence under Section 304A of the IPC has been registered, and the accused driver of the truck has been identified as one Mohit Singh. Now, Prime Minister Modi also took to Twitter to offer his condolences and announced an ex gratia of 2 lakh rupees for the deceased and 50,000 rupees for the injured as well. Moving on to Karnataka now, a day after Sri Ram Sene chief Pramod Mutalik called for Hanuman Chalisa to be played in temples across Karnataka, several members of the right-wing group were arrested by the police in Bengaluru in the early hours on Monday when they gathered around a temple in Bengaluru's Shantinagar. Now, many were taken into preventive custody in other areas as well. According to Deccan Herald, there were reports of such incidents at temples not just in Bengaluru but also Hubli, Belagavi, Mysuru, Chikmagaluru, Yadgir, Mandya and Kolar among other places. Now, at places including in Bengaluru, some Hindu activists were detained by the police. Pramod Mutalik had earlier asked Chief Minister of the state of Karnataka, Basavaraj Bommai, and the Home Minister to show guts shown by Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister, according to Pramod Mutalik, by taking action against unauthorized loudspeakers from religious places and setting the volume of others within permissible limits. Meanwhile, in an update on the Khargone violence, according to PTI, the Madhya Pradesh police have now arrested 3 main accused men in connection with this communal clash that took place in April during Ram Navami procession. With this, a total of 182 people have been arrested in 72 cases registered in connection with the violence. Now, on the 10th of April, some people had allegedly hurled stones at a Ram Navami procession, objecting to loud and provocative music being played in one part of Khargone. Subsequently, clashes broke out in other areas as well. Meanwhile, according to the National Family Health Survey 5 conducted by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, the country's overall fertility fell below the replacement level of 2 children per woman, falling from 2.2, which was reported in the National Family Health Survey 4. Now, the data also showed that women with no schooling have an average of 2.8 children compared with 1.8 children for women with 12 years or more years of schooling. Moving on to business news right now, the Indian rupee fell to an all-time low of 77.42 rupees against the US dollar today. The rupee opened at 77.17 against the US dollar at the foreign exchange market, then dropped further by 52 paise. Now, further, the rupee slipped on a surge in crude oil prices. The US stock market and Asian markets have also suffered setbacks. Meanwhile, according to data by Union Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution, All India monthly average retail price of wheat flour stood at 32.38 rupees per kg in April, the highest since January 2010. Now, among the 4 metros, it's the highest in Mumbai, which is at 49 rupees per kg, followed by Chennai, Kolkata and Delhi. Now, due to this, price of bakery products has also increased. Now, Indian Express, citing sources, has said that the major reason for the rise in price is the Russia-Ukraine war, as it's led to a fall in wheat production. Russia and Ukraine together account for a quarter of the world's total wheat exports. Meanwhile, it was the last day of the LIC IPO subscription. It was subscribed 2.95 times, receiving bids for 47.77 crore equity shares against IPO size of 16.2 crore equity shares. Now, the portion set aside for policyholders has been subscribed 6.10 times. Employees bid 4.39 times the allotted quota, and retail investors 1.99 times. Moving on to environment news right now. This comes in from the city of Mumbai. The Bombay High Court has now asked the BMC, which is the civic body of Mumbai, to stop any reclamation or construction work for the cycling and jogging track around Powai Lake. Now, it has deemed the cycle track around Powai Lake as illegal. Now, the court has also directed the BMC to immediately remove all constructions carried out and restore the reclaimed site to the original position. It also said that the civic body can approach the Supreme Court if required. Now, the plea was filed by two PhD researchers from IIT Bombay and NGO Vanashakti. Now, according to the petitioners, the construction activities carried out in the ecologically fragile wetland of Powai Lake posed a serious threat to the protected and multiple endangered species of flora and fauna there. In the meantime, the BMC on Friday has said that it will follow the court orders and will take further steps post-consultation with the legal department as well. Moving on to international news, it's day 75 of the Ukraine war. On Sunday, the G7 countries have pledged to stop oil imports from Russia. G7 countries include France, Canada, Germany, Italy, Japan, Britain, and the United States. Now, however, these countries still have to specify on how exactly they plan on implementing this. Meanwhile, while addressing a military parade in Moscow, Russian President Putin has now said that Russian troops in eastern Ukraine are, and I quote, defending the motherland, end quote. Now, Putin has said that the invasion of Ukraine, what he calls as a special military operation, was necessary and had been provoked by the West. In the meantime, according to Ukraine's defense ministry, Russian forces are conducting storming operations at the Mariupol steel plant, backed by tanks and artillery fire. One piece of good news before we wrap things up here on this bulletin. This comes in from India. Two Indian student groups from Tamil Nadu and Punjab have won the NASA 2022 Human Exploration Rover Challenge. Now, over 91 teams were competing in the challenge that required US and international student teams to design, engineer, and test a human-powered rover on a course stimulating terrain found on rocky bodies in the solar system. That brings us to the end of this bulletin. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.